There are three classic monsters people generally think of when they think of Halloween. The first is vampires, who, despite having their imagery banned from all heroic direction over the years, still manage to retain their role in creature of the night line. The second is werewolves or wolves, who don't quite have the same pervasive evil as vampires, still make a good scary house. And the third is Frankenstein, or to be more accurate, Frankenstein monster. One of these things is not like the other. Vampires and werewolves are groups, but Frankenstein's monster is individual. Not only that, vampires have at least centuries of authority. Werewolves and
oh my gosh, what weird book is on?
So how did it become so intrinsic to the modern movie of horror?
Quite wolfy.
Vampires and werewolves. Well, for one thing, it's a really good book. Frankenstein, written by Mary Shelley when she was just 18, is considered one of the first science fiction stories, and argued by some to be unique first due to its actual focus on science. Frankenstein is a haunting examination of the maniacal fanaticism felt by those who thirst for knowledge and the lengths that someone can be driven to in their pursuit of that goal, while Frankenstein's monster is a tragic examination of the main results of science taken too far without discipline or consideration for consequences. Also, it got turned into a couple of early horror movies, which probably helped. The horror story begins in a way that has nothing to do with Victor Frankenstein or his monster in a ship heading to the North Pole. The captain is one Robert Walton, and the framing sequence for the story is that Robert is writing letters to his sister back home describing the progress of his expedition. Robert was conceived by the thirst for discovery, and as a result, he embarked on his highly dangerous expedition into uncharted territories for the betterment of knowledge as a whole. Hey look, they're very parallels to our protagonist's personal journey and subsequent downfall. Or no, wait, that's just Victor Frankenstein, frozen and emaciated on a nearby iceberg. So Robert brings him on board, and Victor explains that he's up here because he's been chasing someone. Now some of the ship's crew saw a dog sled in the distance earlier that day, who Victor says is almost certainly the guy he's talking about. Then, as Robert helpfully transcribes the whole novel to send to his sister, Victor proceeds to tell him his entire life story to explain how he got where he is today. So Victor starts at the very beginning with a long explanation of how his parents met and how he, their eldest child, got to travel the world with them from an early age. One day, while his parents were visiting some local poor people, they spotted a little girl who was way prettier and blonder than everyone she lived with, and her poor person family explained that her name was Elizabeth and she was a noble-born orphan they'd taken in before they got poor. Victor's parents and Elizabeth's foster parents collectively decide that she's way too beautiful and should be stuck living in poverty, so Victor's parents adopt her. Yeah, just screw all those other poor kids that aren't blonde-haired little cherubs. So that's how Victor acquires his childhood sweetheart/adopted sister, Elizabeth. They grew up together in an impossibly idyllic Swiss mountain house and their other house in Geneva, and finally their favorite house on Ballerina. Elizabeth has the soul of a poet and mostly focuses on the beauty of nature and other subjects. But Victor is a sciencey, curious soul and starts absorbing the contents of the family library in pursuit of the single goal. Victor wants to understand the nature of nature. Oh, also Victor has a childhood best friend named Clerval, who's basically Sunshine personified. Overall, Victor's life is about as good as it can get, except for that one bit where his mom dies, but all that changes when Victor goes to college. That's right, that uncle you only see at Thanksgiving was right all along. College is an evil tool of the man that changes you into some loosey, bleeding heart version of your former self. The only way to stave off the transformation is to make sure you never learn anything outside your pre-existing worldview and refuse to adjust your opinions accordingly. Well, no, Victor's college experience isn't that kind of disappointing. But you know how every grade has that one kid who's just way more advanced than everyone else, but as soon as that kid tests into a new school environment, they're utterly blindsided by the fact that everyone there is just as smart as they are, and they're no longer the de facto smartest kid in the room, but he's spiraling into a crisis of ego because they don't know who they are anymore? Well, that's not Victor's problem either. Victor's problem is that as soon as it gets to college, that whole knowledge thing spirals out of control. With the help of a professor, Victor absorbs every physical science he can find, along with the help he does in mathematics, and spends 2 years straight making way more progress than anyone else in his classes. This is also around the time that Victor starts thinking about life. Not in that classic, I'm a third year, and what am I doing with my life sort of way, but in a what is life and how can I create it sort of way. You know, normal science stuff. So Victor decides to figure out how to create and give life, which he does in the space of 5 sentences. So, you know, normal science stuff. Anyway, now that Victor's figured out the trick to reanimating the dead, which, side note, he never told us how to do, meaning the movies had to make up that lightning thing on their own, Victor decides he wants to make a man. So Victor casually repurposes his room into a human assembling station, raids a truly staggering number of graveyards, and sets about assembling his creation. This ambitious project takes us almost a year, during which time he throws himself totally into his work, neglects his own health, and wastes away to an emaciated shadow of his former self, driven only by his burning desire to progress, which is actually fairly normal for college. Finally, November rolls around, and Victor finishes assembling his project. He's a beautiful man, practically only the touch of his several while not in the movie theater, Frankenstein monster is a huge, inarticulate, desperate monster. The book version is beautiful, intelligent when he gets learning it. The fault is that his eyes are creepy, and he's a little viscerally disturbing to look at. In fact, his eyes are so creepy that as soon as Victor animates him, he freaks out, declares the experiment a failure, and storms off to take a nap. After some horribly symbolic nightmares, he to find the monster staring down at him, he starts all over again, and books it out into the night. Because nothing says responsible science parent like abandoning your new creation to the elements 5 minutes after its creation because you didn't get his eye color right. Luckily for Victor, shortly thereafter, he's found by his childhood friend, their mom, who came to check up on him because his family was worried that they hadn't heard from him in 3 years. In case it wasn't already obvious, Victor is kind of a self-absorbed jerk. Anyway, together they head back to Victor's apartment, and Victor finds that, conveniently, the monster is up and vanished. Instead of pondering the obvious and sinister implications of this, Victor celebrates the convenient disappearance of his raised failure by passing out and forcing Clerval to nurse him back to health over the course of several months. So Victor gradually recovers with Clerval's help, although the distress of his apparently failed experiment has left him so traumatized that the mere thought of a Bunsen burner left the sin of fainting into the nearest pile of cushions faster than you can say consumption-riddled Victorian enjus. After receiving a letter from Elizabeth asking him to return home, Victor decides he's officially had enough of college, and he and Clerval prepare to return home to Geneva. Unfortunately, they're delayed by weather problems, and it takes them a few more months before they can actually go back. But that's just more time for Victor to recover. And by the time Victor and Clerval are ready to return to Geneva, Victor's almost totally forgotten that crime against nature he committed that drove him to abandon himself. But unfortunately for everyone involved, Victor's dad writes to inform him that his younger brother William has been murdered. Elizabeth's losing her mind over it, so she gives William permission to wear an antique locket, and it looks like he might have been killed so someone can steal it. Victor and Clerval book it back to Geneva, but when Victor takes a break to exit a thunderstorm, he spots the unmistakable silhouette of the monster he created hiding in the trees. This is terrible news for Victor because he immediately puts together that this means his brother was murdered by something he made, making it his fault. Compounding the issue, the missing locket has been discovered in the possession of Justine, a housekeeper and basically a second adopted daughter of Count Frankenstein. Although she's nowhere near as blonde as Elizabeth, so obviously she's not really considered family. Anyway, Justine has the locket, so Justine is being accused of the murder. Now this is the part where Victor goes from a self-absorbed jerk with no real mind for consequences to a truly beautiful asshole, because Victor knows Justine is innocent. Victor is very insistent that Justine is innocent, but Victor thinks that telling anyone why he knows she's innocent will just make him sound crazy, or worse, guilty. So instead, he keeps his mouth shut for the entire trial. Justine's false confession.
Can I use the bathroom?
All because he didn't want to own up to his own responsibility and potentially face consequences for his actions or people thinking he might be crazy. So that's 2 deaths on Victor's head right now. But it's okay, because he's a handsome, tortured genius or something. Also, Elizabeth has a full-on existential crisis and can no longer recognize the beauty in a world that let her basically sister die so cruelly. Obviously, this makes Victor feel really bad, which is clearly the most important part of the situation. Victor decides that the only solution is to hike his feelings away, so he books it out to Mont Blanc for a little nature therapy. Unfortunately, his nature therapy is interrupted by his crime against nature as Frankenstein's monster appears before him and sits him down so he can tell him an exhaustively detailed description of how he spent the last 2 years in the hopes that it will persuade Victor to do something for him. So if you're keeping track, that's an exhaustive life story inside another exhaustive life story that poor Captain Walton is transcribing in its entirety to mail to his sister. So the monster explains that after Victor down and abandoned him, he kind of wandered around for a while, barely sentient and incapable of understanding his surroundings, because he was basically a giant newborn baby, Victor. Anyway, the monster wandered into a forest and gradually learned to understand parts of his surroundings. This included the discovery of fire, which, after a brief incident where he learned that fire hurt, he grew to appreciate and carefully cultivated with wood. One interesting thing that becomes clear about the monster as he tells his story is that he's very similar to Victor in a lot of ways. One, he's very intelligent, and like Victor, operates by way of the scientific method, observe, hypothesize, test, repeat. This is how he figures out fire, cooking, and eventually language, although that comes later. See, the monster eventually starts running low on food and strikes out in search of greener pastures, which leads him to find first a shed and then an entire village. Unfortunately, he observes that the average response to his presence is screaming, occasionally supplemented by throwing rocks. So he learns to avoid major residential areas and instead hides in a low shelter built off of a cottage. As it turns out, this cottage belongs to a small family of 3, a man and his 2 children.
No, I use the
in which time he learns to speak
English
and also reads the family's entire soap opera story, which helpfully recounts, making this an exhaustive life story, another exhaustive life story, and still yet another exhaustive life story. Suffice to say, it's exhausting. Also, someone conveniently drops a bunch of thematically appropriate books nearby, so the monster gets a hold of Paradise Lost, and like literally everybody else, relates to it. But in this case, it's meant to be like pointed and tragic. Anyway, the most important thing about this experience is not good farming practice or even
Not really. I'm doing a live stream.
the kind of family that you're observing. So he
And I
thought,
can't play right now, sorry.
blind, meaning you won't be able to see.
I don't want to wear
Then
clothes.
knocks on the door and you'll be for a while until he gets to playing. The others come back and he gets to his house in the night. The family moves out and the monster burns down their house in retribution. And after a pleasant misadventure where he gets shot, the monster stumbles on none other than William Frankenstein. The mistake of name and the monster to kill him. So the motivator there is that so far the monster has basically only ever been abused, mistreated, and abandoned. So when faced with the overwhelming cruelty of a world he can't change, he finds ways to lash out at it and comforts himself with the knowledge that he's not entirely helpless and does have the power to hurt the people who hurt him. So yeah, he kills William, frames Justine, and that brings us to the present, where the monster has a request. See, all he really wants is to not be alone. So he asks Victor to make him a bride. Obviously, Victor refuses, but the monster points out that he's only a jerk because Victor created him, abandoned him, and lives alone in a world that only knows how to fear him. If he makes him a girlfriend, someone like him will be able to understand him. He'll have no more reason to be evil. Also, if Victor doesn't, he'll murder his friends and family and blame him for the crime. Thoroughly persuaded, Victor returns home and begins preparing for Crimes Against Nature 2, Electric Boogaloo, but not before he gets engaged to Elizabeth at the request of his aging father. So Victor heads off to England, accompanied by perpetual sunshine friend Clerval, and while Clerval goes full tourist, Victor prepares to recreate the biggest mistake of his life, but with boobs this time. So Victor leaves Clerval doing the Scotland tourist circuit and heads for the Orkneys, a suitably miserable area for him to mope in due time. But as he progresses, he realizes something that few authors seem to have internalized. That just dropping a girlfriend in front of a guy won't actually guarantee that they'll get along. This suggests the worrying possibility of two angry water monsters rather than one. Or even worse, they might get along too well and create a super race of monsters together. Now, while this is a medically solvable problem, Victor is too busy freaking out to remember his training, so he instead opts to do a much more rational thing and to destroy the unfinished lady monster. Obviously, this pisses off the monster, who obviously promises Victor that he'll be with him on his wedding night. Victor, being both egotistic and sorely lacking in imagination, interprets this to mean that the monster will kill him after he's gotten married to Elizabeth, rather than the much more reasonable assumption that the monster intends to start making good on his promise to murder everyone Victor has loved. But Victor puts two and two together when Clerval turns up dead the next morning with Victor as the prime suspect. Victor immediately falls into a 2-month-long angst coma, seriously inconvenienced jail, and when he wakes up, he gets acquitted, and his father arrives to take him home so he can finally marry Elizabeth, which is a very good idea that definitely won't have repercussions. Victor's hopeful that marrying Elizabeth will be able to pull him out of his perpetual funk, which is obviously yet more reason not to worry at all if something bad might happen to anyone but Victor. That would require that he think about someone other than himself in these seconds, which obviously is beyond even his greatest scientific mind. So Victor and Elizabeth get married, and surprise, the monster immediately breaks in and murders Elizabeth. Victor promptly freaks out and starts chasing the monster and pursues him all the way to the North Pole. Unfortunately, it turns out it's like super cold up there, and Victor immediately nearly dies of explosion. This is where and how Captain Fulton finds him, and that brings us to the present. Speaking of the present, Walton's ship gets stuck in the ice, and the only safe choice is to abandon the expedition and turn back. Having just received an object lesson in the dangers of forging onward and discovering past the point of rational fear, Walton decides that the safe choice is the way to go, and turns the ship around. Also, Victor dies of like 14 different kinds of exhaustion and exposure, at which point none other than Frankenstein's monster appears on board to pay his respects. Just like his creator, the monster spends an inordinate amount of time waxing eloquent about how all that horrible stuff he did really hurt him. Isn't that the important thing to consider right now? Anyway, the monster tells Walton that he can walk himself, jumps out the boat window, and vanishes into the snow. So the moral of this story is, don't be an asshole. Or if not be an asshole, at least don't play God and create more assholes. Take one more step towards all that's waiting. Don't you know I'm not your ghost anymore? You lost the love I love the most. I learned to live half a life, and now you want me one more time. Who do you think you are, running around leaving scars, collecting your jar of hearts, tearing love apart? Catch a cold, slice inside your soul. Don't come back for me, don't come back at all. Who do you think you are, running around leaving scars, collecting your jar of hearts, tearing love apart? Catch a cold, inside your soul. Don't come back for me, don't come back at all. Thank you. Today, there are less sensors on that planet. We're putting AI into everything, and everything into the cloud. It's all so smart. But how do you work with it? Ask this part. He's using satellite data to help in space operations. That's smart. At this point, supply chains are becoming more transparent with blockchain. That's smart for shipments. In this lab, researchers are working with Watson to help them find new treatments. That's smart for medicine. This band, the world's most encrypted mainframe, is helping cyber crime. That's smart for everyone. And in Africa, IoT sensors and the IBM cloud are protecting the data and rest. That's smart for Rhonda. Yes, Rhonda. Because smart only really matters when you put it to work. Not just for us, but for all of us. Let's make smart to work. Alright, let's talk vampires. Vampires have gone through an absurd transformation in the past few centuries. There's no one cultural origin for them, and it really shows. Modern interpretations will often introduce the concept of vampire clans, or wacky vampire subspecies or whatever, in an attempt to reconcile the crazy menagerie of traits that have been assigned to vampires throughout history. Sometimes they're demons or fae, sometimes they're hungry ghosts, sometimes they're your Happy Easter, everybody! It's time for bunnies, egg hunts, and everyone's best buddy, Big J. Not the most obviously themed subject matter, but it's a fun way to spend a Sunday, and it puts interestingly shaped chocolate back on the shelves after the Valentine's supply runs out. So I've got no complaint. Now, Easter is a complicated holiday. At its heart, the modern celebration is about one thing and one thing only. Jesus, specifically how he rose from the grave 3 days after getting crucified. Whoa. The first bit of confusion comes to us straight from Greece, where Easter is called Gacha, which is cognate with Pesach, Jewish Passover of all things. For those unfamiliar, Passover is a celebration of the first Exodus from Egypt, which you may note has very little to do with Jesus and the resurrection thereof. So while you might think this is a classic case of holiday hijacking, like how Christmas maybe bumped up Saturnalia to go to celebration of the year, there's actually a legit reason for why Passover and Easter are connected, and it all starts with the Last Supper. See, the Synoptic Gospels explicitly state that the Last Supper is a Passover meal. Now, this isn't a universally held belief. The Gospel of John puts Passover dinner as happening a few hours after Big J Kingdom, but in a lot of the source material, the Greek according Last Supper is itself a Passover celebration, albeit given additional significance by Jesus equating his body to the matzah and his blood to the wine. This means that Jesus rising from the grave canonically has to happen mere days after Passover. So while the events being celebrated are completely distinct, they're also inextricably connected just by virtue of the timeline of events. The celebration of Easter also has very little in common with the traditional Passover Seder, which is another major clue that they're not actually sort of the same thing. But this does pose the question, where does all the iconic Easter stuff come from? The eggs, the rabbits, the pastels. Well, Easter eggs as Easter eggs seem to have originated in Mesopotamia, where early Christians dyed eggs red to symbolize the blood of Christ. The practice of decorating eggs in spring celebrations is at least 60,000 years old. Engraved ostrich eggs dating back about that far can be found in Africa. At some point, Easter eggs were specifically assigned the symbolism of representing too. Easter egg hunts were apparently invented by Martin Luther, but eggs have been associated with spring celebrations for a lot longer than that. One contributing factor for the egg thing might be that eggs have been symbolically linked with Martin Luther for a long time. All themes relevant to spring celebrations along strikes. And on a similar note, hares were also generalized fertility symbols with themes of rebirth, and were sometimes thought to be capable of asexual reproduction, aka virgin. And a holiday celebrating a resurrection would most likely have a pretty easy time sanctifying pre-established life, rebirth, and even fertility as a whole. This could explain why eggs and hares are iconic symbols of a holiday that, practically speaking, has almost nothing to do with either of them. The figure of the Easter Bunny specifically originates with German Lutheran, assigning it a Santa-like role of judging the niceness of kids to determine if candy and eggs for the holiday. It doesn't seem like anyone knows why it exists, but these things happen, I guess. But it's beyond simple symbolic practicality or random happenstance. There's another possible source for all these weird un-Jesus well up their holiday, and that's good old-fashioned paganism. So let's talk about Eostre, also known as Ashtar. So in the 8th century, there's one named Bede, wrote a treatise where he said that pagan Anglo-Saxons used to celebrate the goddess Eostre by holding festivals in April. By the time of his writing, these celebrations had been superseded by more familiar Easter celebrations specific about the resurrection. He says the pagan origin of the celebration is why the holiday is called Easter in the first place. Eostre is not referenced by that name anywhere else, which led some people to wonder if Bede made the whole thing up. Although as of 1958, a large number of 2nd century vocative inscriptions discovered in Germany, all directed to the matrone Austria Henne, which has been etymologically linked to Eostre, presenting evidence of an Eostre-like goddess or set of goddesses acting in worship at about the right time and place to corroborate the claim. He didn't say anything about hares and eggs being symbols of Eostre. The only real source we have on the celebrations. The tale of Eostre transforming a bird into a laying hare, but this movie was first cited in the 1990s. It didn't have any traces before that. There is, however, an actually only sounds sort of like a conspiracy theory. To start with, Eostre was most likely a version of the Proto-Indo-European dawn goddess Havet, a figure reconstructed by comparative mythology scholars drawing connections between similar Indo-European deities with etymologically similar names to try and reproduce the original religion of Islam. This reconstructed Proto-Indo-European religion is basically supposed to be the OG religion strongly affected the one that came after. So, Hyksos is generally considered to have been the starting point for a large number of goddesses affiliated with the dawn, the spring, fertility, and other stuff in that general vein, including Eos, Ushas, Aurora, and Austri. Due to the propensity of the more fertility-oriented of these goddesses to wind up getting kidnapped, with their rescue being symbolic for the coming of spring and the return of life to the world, the theory is that Hyksos probably had a myth with that general structure. Now, one of the goddesses thought to be an offshoot of Hyksos is Aphrodite, whose name might even etymologically imply a possible origin as a dawn goddess. One translation is she who shines in the sun. Anyway, Aphrodite had a sacred animal, and that animal was a hare, connected again due to their fertility. So, that's a possible connection. Eostre, or maybe even the original Hyksos, might have had an affiliation with hares that carried over to Aphrodite. Maybe. Look, we really don't have a lot to go on with this holiday. There's got to be something connecting it, but information gets lost all the time. We don't really know for certain what all might be connected to the traditional celebrations, or why people drew the connections they did. One thing we know Easter isn't connected to is Ishtar. This claim you've probably seen circulated on Facebook every year since 2013 originated in the 1800s when the Scottish theologian Alexander Hislop wrote a religious pamphlet that amounted to a conspiracy theory that the Catholic Church was a thinly based continuation of ancient Babylonian worship. He claimed that Easter and Ishtar were connected on the basis that they sounded the same, which is the kind of reasoning that makes modern etymologists weep as they envision a terrible future where puns are regarded as ironclad gospel. And while it's true that Ishtar did have a celebration on the first full moon after the celebrating her return to the underworld, there's no evidence that this celebration influenced Easter directly forward. Spring festivals with a theme of rebirth are kind of a worldwide phenomenon, fairly self-evident. One of his most accomplished is that eggs are sacred to Ishtar, which just straight up isn't true. Ishtar's symbols included lions and doves, with no bunnies or eggs. In short, no, not even a little bit. A mystery. So the next time you wonder why you celebrate the resurrection by microwave marshmallow peeps and spilling chocolate all over your Sunday best, keep wondering. Ask is another country, extremely poor documentation, and sometimes the answer isn't just a Google away. Besides, much more fun if not everything makes As it passes the sun, like a stream that meets a border, halfway through the world. Like but because I've been over. Freedom, rescue, unbind, unchain, escape free. Together with our hearts and we have the power in slavery for good. Jews, and those on the front lines all have a reason. For the first time ever, international justice mission is bringing all of our voices together in one. And here's a fun thing people seem to forget. Ancient cultures were cultures, as in they've changed. See, looking back on them, it's easy to see ancient cultures as these static, creed-based civilizations where everyone lived the same way for hundreds of years and worshipped a multi-theistic pantheon that never underwent any significant changes. And then when the civilization fell apart, everyone in the civilization presumably evaporated or spontaneously mummified themselves. So obviously, all Romans were togas, all Norsemen were seafaring Vikings, and ancient Japan was all katanas and kimonos, which, by the way, would be a good name for a feudal Japan role-playing game. But obviously, that's super not true. Just like America's gone from being a universally Christian European nation to a multicultural melting pot in less than 300 years, ancient civilizations underwent religious and cultural changes all the time. Like, for a big example, ancient Greek worship of the Hellenistic pantheon, which is almost the quintessential ancient pantheon and ancient civilization combo, wasn't ever one consistent thing. Sure, there was a broad-scale state religion, but it was supplemented by dozens, if not hundreds, of localized cults that honored specific deities, and whatever cults were more prominent at any given time also determined what gods were more prominent in worship overall. Stuff was constantly in flux, and as a result, most myths have at least a handful of variant telling as a result of localization and disparate cult interpretations. There's basically no canon as a result of this natural drift. And in a more dramatic version of choose your own adventure myths, sometimes you had total theistic overhauls as a result of key events in a culture's history. So today we'll be talking about the quintessential Mesoamerican god, the one basically everyone has at least heard about, and even better, the one that had his own Indiana Jones-style cult and a dinosaur named after him. Let's talk Quetzalcoatl. But as we've just discussed, cultures change. Quetzalcoatl is an old god, even by Mesoamerican standards. He doesn't have any broad-scale consistent myths or stories, or at least none that we know about anymore. So before I get into the details of how the cult of the feathered serpent became culturally ubiquitous in Mesoamerica, it's time for a history lesson. So the feathered serpent story begins way back at the lost and found city of Teotihuacan. But Quetzalcoatl only gets codified when the Aztec Empire forms almost 1,700 years after that. So let's start there, because it's a starting point that most of us have at least a little bit of understanding. In my Huitzilopochtli video, I talked about Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, which was sacred to the sun god Huitzilopochtli. And in Huitzilopochtli's origin story, we touched on the birth of Quetzalcoatl, a happy, fun deity of arts and crafts who also happened to be an enormous, huge dragon. What was interesting about that myth is that it doesn't actually explain anything about Quetzalcoatl. Certainly not to the same level of detail that it explains Huitzilopochtli and Quetzalcoatl. He's just kind of not there one minute and there the next, and then they move on. So clearly, Quetzalcoatl was already a major player in the Aztec belief system even before this myth got codified, or he would have warranted a more detailed explanation for why we should care. So where did he come from? Well, the Aztec civilization only really got big in the 14th century, but the people who would become part of the Aztecs, at this point in history where the Nahuatl, specifically in Mexico, started migrating into central Mexico as early as the 6th century. They founded Tenochtitlan in the 1300s and started putting together their empire. Now, Huitzilopochtli wasn't that much of a big shot deity at this point. He'd been relatively small potatoes in the Navajo religion. The Aztec Empire was formed in an alliance between three major tribes. This guy, Tlacaelel, who had organized the Triple Alliance in the first place, decided to pull a knock it out and then totally revamp the Nahuatl religion, elevating the former nobody god Huitzilopochtli as a full-scale soulless deity and city patron. That's how we got the fun and the sun god we all know and love, and also how we got such a clear-cut origin story for him. It was a government-mandated myth, and frankly, the Aztecs didn't last long enough for it to drift. So if the Aztec/Nahuatl religion underwent such a total overhaul in the early 1400s, what was it like before? And does this maybe explain where Quetzalcoatl actually came from? Well, remember how I brought up Teotihuacan a couple paragraphs ago? Let's go way back, 1,700 years before the Aztecs, to 300 BCE, 900 years before the Nahuatl people entered the scene, and back when nomadic tribes were first starting to form settlements in Mesoamerica. In 200 BCE, somebody, and we don't know who, starts building Teotihuacan. Within 300 years, by 100 AD, the Pyramid of the Sun, the most impressive building in Teotihuacan, has been completed. By 450 AD, the civilization in Teotihuacan is at the height of its power and influence. References to their people are found all over Mesoamerica, and evidence of their architectural and art style are similarly common. It's an industrial center and produces all kinds of art, incredible paintings and murals, as well as obsidian tools. The population is estimated to be 125,000 people at least, which would make it the 6th largest city in the world at this point. Teotihuacan is functionally an empire a full 1,000 years before the Aztecs are a thing. And side note, the city layout of Teotihuacan is incredibly beautiful. They had a grid. Then around the 6th century, the population of Teotihuacan starts declining. Around the 7th century, the buildings housing the rulers of Teotihuacan are burned to the ground, and several statues are shattered, with their pieces being deliberately scattered. Shortly thereafter, the city is completely abandoned, and just like that, a great civilization is gone. And no, we don't know why. That's what makes this fun. The current theory is that there was some kind of internal unrest, maybe even a civil uprising, possibly fueled by some climate-shifting-induced droughts that we know occurred around 500 AD. But we still don't know for sure why the city was abandoned. Now, we know next to nothing about the civilization and gods of Teotihuacan, on account of it being a lost civilization and all, but conveniently, they left enough murals and statues to give us a rough idea of what major players. First off, continuing the tradition of Mesoamerican deities being terrifying, the patron goddess of Teotihuacan looked like this. And though we don't know any of their names, she's called alternately the Great Goddess of Teotihuacan or Teotihuacan